Mayor, we are now streaming.
Thanks, Catherine. Councillors, the next item we have on the agenda is item 2, which was item 11, Wear It Purple. Councillors, I'm going to propose that we have a 5-minute break at approximately 9:15, just so we can get through the next 15 minutes. So, Councillor Drury, this is your motion.
Thank you, Mayor. And I wish to move it in an amended fashion that hopefully can be displayed on the screen. Thank you, Catherine. So my motion is that we note that Council celebrated the 12th annual Wear It Purple Day on Friday, the 22nd of August, which had the theme Start the Conversation, Keeping It Going. And secondly, in recognising and promoting this message, we note the decision of Commisoli versus Passus, 2019, New South Wales CATAD 155, handed down by the Administrative Tribunal during the term of this council, which found that a complaint of homosexual vilification in breach of the Anti-Discrimination Act by Council Passus was substantiated. Councillors, I think it is important that we recognise and do what we can to support young people in our community. The actual Wear It Purple was established by young people in the inner west. Young people who were concerned about others who were taking their lives due to bullying, harassment, and vilification. That is why this day was established by some very brave young rainbow folk who wanted to start a conversation to remind us, and particularly, well, all of us, but particularly the older of us, that our actions have consequences, and they particularly have consequences in terms of young people in difficult stages in their lives. This is why I have moved this resolution, and I seek all councillors' support to pass it unanimously.
Thanks, Councillor Drury. Do
Councillor
we have a second?
Porteous, I'd like to second this.
This is seconded by Councillor Kiat. Councillor Kiat, would you like to speak to this?
I would. Councillors, I'm very glad that this item is on the agenda. I was very pleased to hear from the students who organised the Wear It Purple celebration. We know that these events are still really important, particularly for young people. There's still a lot of difficulty for LGBTQI folk in our community with oppression and with all of the horrible consequences that come from discrimination from others. And Councillor Drury has referred to the horrible scourge of suicide. That's the worst possible consequence, but there are so many horrible circumstances that young LGBTQI people in our community face because of discrimination, because of hatred. We need to celebrate them. And, you know, I think particularly of young trans people, there's still an ongoing debate in our community, and we need to win it in support of young trans people and all queer people. I think it's really appropriate that Councillor Drury has raised the issue of the then Deputy Mayor engaging in homophobic vilification as found by NCAT and upheld on appeal. That was a horrible day for our council. I was really horrified when Councillor Passis was elected as Deputy Mayor because I didn't think that she reflected the values of our community. I don't think that any councillor should have voted for her for Deputy Mayor, and I think that that was vindicated by what happened. And I hope that in future, councillors think really seriously about supporting someone with known views on these issues for a position of leadership in our council. I'll just read very briefly from the judgment that's referred to in Councillor Drury's item point 2. Councillor Passis, whilst denying that she said to the police that the rainbow flag was similar to the ISIS flag, she agreed that she had referred to the ISIS flag as an analogy. How horrible is that for young people celebrating the yes vote to be told that the rainbow flag is somehow analogous to the ISIS flag? Horrible, horrible. And Councillor Passis was rightly condemned by NCAT and had to pay a significant fine and was meant to publish an apology. I don't know if that ever occurred, but that was the right thing to do by NCAT. It was very, very brave of the young Mr. Comensoli to take her all the way to NCAT. Many people wouldn't have done that. He did that without support. So he's a very impressive young man. Rather him as Deputy Mayor. And I think he's a Labour person, actually, I'm not sure. So look, I just say that this is important. It's important that council recognise this. It's kind of it's a sorry part of our history, our term.
Councillor Kidd, I'm afraid you have to wrap up.
And so I encourage you to support Councillor Drury's motion. I don't expect everyone will, but I think it is important.
Thanks for that, Councillor Kidd. Are there any other councillors that want to speak on this item? There's no other councillors that want to speak on this item.
Yes, I would
Councillor
like to
Passis,
speak.
okay, go ahead.
First of all, I really must be doing something right for what was said here tonight. Secondly, Councillor Drury has been on council for the whole time since this Purple Day concept came about. And he's never, ever, ever raised a motion to celebrate Purple Day. And at the time when his motion was put on the agenda, he knew fully well that we never would have got to that motion, so we wouldn't have been able to vote to celebrate 2 days later. The motion was solely put on the agenda to attack me, his opposition, which has been going on for years. I can wear it. Now, this does not do anything to make me change how I operate and representing the residents. Secondly, Councillor Kiat made a statement that said Mr. Comensoli did this all on his own, with support from a couple of councillors, and he knows who the councillors are. Mr. Comensoli was urged to take this action. This action that was taken against me was purely political. From his own words, Mr. Comensoli said, "I hate Liberals." Now, you councillors can do what you want with me, but I can tell you that when I go out and about amongst the residents, they're not concerned about a private matter at my home, whether you want to believe this, what happened at NCAT or not, that's up to you. I furnished my statement after I was forced to put in what NCAT told me to put in the paper, and that could not be challenged. And what I said in the newspaper was, I stick by what I said, and I will. And I'm very, very proud that my two opposition in my ward have done nothing but try to destroy me. And Councillor Drury knows that Labor's tried it for years, and I still get elected because people know me. This motion was hypocritical in the extreme. Not one of those councillors that have gone after me has raised the Pride Centre and pushed for it.
Point of order, Mayor. Point of order. I draw your attention to the Code of Meeting Practice 1511C, which prohibits insulting or making personal reflections or impugns improper motives on any council official or alleges breach. I believe that improper motives have been impugned to me for moving this.
Yeah,
and I've sat silently whilst you've let this go on for some time.
A person who addressed council accused you of that.
This,
thank you, Councillor Passis, please.
Madam Mayor,
in a far more
I had the
effective
floor.
manner.
Thank you, Councillor Drew.
I had the floor.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, Councillor Drew. Councillor Passis, I'd ask you to desist from those comments.
Okay, I had the floor. What I've just
Councillor
been
Passis, I'd actually
of,
ask you to wrap up as your time has expired.
I've been interrupted. I'm afraid to say what Councillor Drury has just accused me of. The speaker that spoke on this weeks ago
Councillor
said
Passis,
the same
I would
thing.
caution you in what you say. Councillor Passis, your time has expired.
No, I'm only telling you the speaker who spoke accused Councillor Drury of the same thing.
Thank you, Councillor Passis, your time has expired.
So, councillors,
Councillor
you
Passis,
can
your
vote
time has
how
expired.
you like on this.
Okay, councillor, is there any other councillor
Madam Mayor,
on this item? Councillor Stamalos,
Madam Mayor.
Please go ahead, Councillor Stamalos.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I'm questioning the legality of this motion.
Yes, would you like, I am satisfied that this motion is in order,
Madam
but
Mayor,
if you would like to get the opinion of the governance specialist, I'm happy to get that. Would you like,
Madam Mayor,
would you like that?
we've had a couple of instances where councillors have been found guilty at NCAT. I would see it as inappropriate.
Sorry, Councillor Stanners, did you want to get an opinion from the governance specialist?
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
So could we just get
Can I put a
the
question?
governance specialist to speak to that?
Could I put a question, Madam Mayor?
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
So the question, Madam Mayor, is that we've had a couple of instances where councillors have been found guilty by NCAT. Is it appropriate for other councillors to use that within the context of motions? That's my question. Thanks.
Madam Mayor, I need to come back to the Code of Meeting Practice and answer by saying, is it a legal motion? And looking at part 1, there is no problem. Looking at part 2, if that is fact,
It is.
if it's fact, it is not an illegal motion and is quite okay to be considered by council.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Stanners, did you want to speak any further on the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. In light of the fact that the motion is legal, I would see it as inappropriate that where councillors are found guilty and has been publicly made known that other councillors need to use this for the purpose of their motions. Well, any of those councillors that have been involved in those processes, I see it as not a good thing in creating good relationships and the leadership of our council for this to occur. Both of these instances are well known, publicly known, and they don't need to be raised by any councillor for any purpose within notices of motion. This is a very good motion, point 1, in the fact that Wear It Purple Day is on the 12th annual occasion. It's a very positive motion, point 1. I would ask that councillors refrain from using those opportunities to include that within their notices of motion. I find it very unhelpful in creating the framework of leadership and respect within this council. And I'll be absenting from the decision on the basis of that.
Okay,
Can I just ask a question to the chair?
Yes, Councillor Kiat.
Oh, well, I was going to ask a question to Councillor Stamalos, but he's absented himself, so no point.
So Councillor Kent, you wanted to ask a
Councillor
question.
Smolis, you're back. Councillor Smolis, didn't you vote for a motion that noted the outcome of an NCAT decision in relation to Councillor Byrne?
I don't believe anybody's used
I think
that.
he did.
I don't believe anyone's used that as a notice of motion.
I recall doing that.
Okay, thanks for that. We've asked the question. The question's been answered. Councillors, is there anybody else that wants to speak on this item, or can I put this
Yes, Chair.
back to Councillor
Chair.
Drury for a right of reply? Who's
Chair.
that, sorry?
Councillor Macri.
Councillor Macri. Please go ahead, Councillor Macri.
Chair, I'm really uncomfortable with this motion, and I'd like to move an amendment that's to move point 1 and deletion of point 2. I think to actually use this in a personal attack on a rival councillor really answers, it just brings council into disrepute. You know, people have been found guilty. I'm not going to get involved with the issue of that. It's about how council operates, and council will never operate when it's operating like this. This is poor form, and I think everything has been done with this. Apologies have been made. It's been put to rest. I myself in this chamber have been a victim of vilification, of basically being questioning where I was born and all that. I don't bring that up anymore, councillor, because it doesn't make the place run any better. And it's really cheap, dirty politics. And I will, if this motion goes through in its current form, I'll be doing what Councillor Stamoulis does. I'll be actually absenting myself from this, because it actually brings the actual great work that those young people have done into disrepute. That's all I'll say.
Thanks, Councillor Macri. So, Councillor Macri, did you say you wanted to move an amendment to remove point 2?
Yes.
We've got that. Okay. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Macri's amendment? Is that Councillor Rossetti? So that's seconded by Councillor Rossetti. Okay, so
Councillor Porteous, can I speak briefly to the amendment?
Yes, I'll just check first of all. Councillor Rossetti, did you want to speak to the amendment?
No.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Kent.
I just very briefly want to make 2 points about the NCAT decision. The first point is that the bar for what's called vilification on the grounds of homosexuality under the Anti-Discrimination Act, it's a really high bar, because you need to show that it was a public act. Vilification is described as inciting hatred in public, so it needs to be a public act. And NCAT found that what Councillor Passis did was in public, because she was yelling at her neighbor. And the second point I want to make is that that the findings were upheld on appeal. And I think that's important. I think we should assume that these allegations, serious as they are, weren't tested. They were tested.
Thrown out under appeal. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Councillor Passis, did you have a point of order?
Go through it properly.
Councillor Passis, did you have a point of order?
Point of order, he's misleading the council. 2 points were thrown out in the appeal.
It's not a, Councillor Passis is.
Yes, he's misleading the council.
He's quoting facts, he's not misleading the council. Please
Yeah, so
ahead,
the decision of the commissioner that that Councillor Passis had engaged in vilification on the grounds of homosexuality was upheld on appeal. Yes, the allegations were tested twice. So I just think
I would like to speak on the amendment, please.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Kent. Okay, so we've got Councillor Drury, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. Yes,
Right,
I do. I
wasn't
want to
sure.
speak on the amendment as well.
Okay, so I'll go to Councillor Drury first, then I'll go to Councillor Passis.
The first point that I will make is that I have been very careful not to say that Councillor Passis was guilty. I have said that she was found by NCAT that a complaint of homosexual vilification in breach of the Act by council passes was substantiated. That is what I have said, and I've been very precise in saying that. The second point I'll raise is we're at Purple Day, and these days are not happy little days where everyone has a little bit of fun and maybe a bit of cake. These days are about trying to make a difference. And that's why these two issues are put together. They're put together quite specifically because We're at Purple Day was about young people, taking their own lives because of vilification, bullying, and harassment. That is why the day is there. That is the reason for the day. And yet we still have instances of homosexual vilification which have been substantiated against Councillor Passes. These matters are inextricably linked.
Thanks, Councillor Drury. Councillor Passes.
Yes, first of all, it's very selective what you leave out. Second of all, I have it on good authority. If I would have went to the High Court, I would have won. We all know what NCAT is. And at the moment, I think the Mayor might agree with me. However, the former Mayor might agree with me. However, this motion is purely an attack, a personal attack on me. It had nothing to do with Purple Day. The councillor who put this motion up has never mentioned it, has never been involved in it, and knew that the day would not be celebrated by our residents or the council because he knew it would not be heard. It was purely a political attack on me. And in a way, I will tell you, I am proud of this attack because if I was a non-event, I wouldn't have had my two opponents in my ward after me the whole time of this council. I cannot believe I've even had one of the councillors vote against a motion when I wanted to clean up the CBD. That goes to show how this council has operated in this term. Not in the best interest of the residents, trying to score points, and we leave it up to the residents. I have been attacked since the day I was elected to council 4 terms ago, and I still get elected. You have brought the council into disrepute. If you're so concerned about Purple Day, Councillor Drury, you would have raised it 10 years ago.
Councillor Passes, thank you. Is there any other councillor that wants to speak on this item? Otherwise, I'll go to Councillor Drury for a right of reply. Councillor Drury? You're on mute. You're on mute, Councillor Drury.
He has no right to reply. He's replied that many times. How many more times?
Oh, sorry. No, you're right. We're debating the amendment. Sorry. Sorry, Councillor Drury, no right of reply. So, Councillor Macri, this is your amendment. Do you want a right of reply?
Chair, it's a fairly simple thing. It's about doing the right thing by everyone and not looking like we're making gain on people's misery. And that's what we're doing here. We're making gain on people's misery. And I can't be associated with that. I cannot do it. I think it's poor. And, you know, it's all right to accept people's support and vote for positions. And then when it comes after the fact, then they're not fit humans anymore. I just find that very strange, very strange. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Councillor Macri. Okay, I'm now going to put the Macri amendment that point 2 be removed from the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. We've got Passis, Macri, Rossetti. And I believe that's it. Yeah. So that's 3. All those against, please raise your hand. That's Drury, Porteous, Steer, De Cruz, Hesse, Lockie, Byrne, Stamalos. Oh, Councillor Stamalos, how did you vote on this? Councillor Stamalos, are you there?
He's left.
He's
Mayor.
left. Oh, okay.
Oh, the mayor wanted my vote.
Councillor
I'm
Stamalos.
supposed to be homophobic, but the mayor didn't mind at the time when he begged for my vote.
Councillor Stamalos, you mean the former mayor? Councillor Stamalos is absent then. So that is, Catherine, have you managed to capture that?
Yes, that's 3 for and 10 against.
Yes. And we've got Councillor Stamalos has left the room. Yes. Okay, so councillors, that amendment is lost. We now return to the primary motion. Are there any other councillors that wanted to speak to the primary motion before I go to Councillor Drury for a right of reply? Okay, I can go to Councillor Drury for a right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. I've just been asked to do the right thing by everybody and not mention substantiated vilification. So we should just ignore it. We should just forget it. We should just kind of not worry about it because it might upset a councillor. That's when I understand the proposition that it's just been put to me. Well, I'm terribly sorry. I can't do that. Because my concern in raising this motion was not for the councillor, but is for the young people, the rainbow young people whose lives are affected by vilification, bullying, and harassment. They were foremost in my mind, moving this motion. Now, these days, I think really, if they have substance, then what we need to do is actually stand up for what they mean. The day was about starting a conversation and keeping it going, and I'm keeping a conversation going about saying that this substantiated vilification is not in keeping with this. Now, it has been alleged that I have never been involved in Wear It Purple Day. I'm beg to differ. I've actually been involved for quite some time, and I've known the young people who actually established this day. I think these days are not just about, you know, smiley, happy stuff.
You never put a motion
These
up before.
days need to be about real change. That's what the young people who set this day up wanted. They wanted real change. They wanted adults, they wanted all of us to say that bullying, harassment, and vilification is not okay. We should call that out when it is found to have occurred. That is what the people who set Wear It Purple up want. That is the point of the day. I'm calling it out. I'm calling out NCAT found a complaint of homosexual vilification in breach of the Anti-Discrimination Act by Councillor Passis to be substantiated. I urge all to support the motion.
Thank you for that, Councillor Drury. Councillors, I'm now going to put the Drury Kiat motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. So we have Councillor Drury, Porteous, Steer, De Cruz, Councillor Kiat, Councillor McKenna. I think Councillor Hess is out of the room at the moment. Councillor Lockie, Councillor Byrne, Councillor York. All those against? We have Passis, we have Rossetti. Councillor Stamos, I believe, has left. Councillor Stamos, are you there? No, Councillor Stamos has left. And I believe Councillor Macri has also left the room. So that's Rossetti and Passis against, with Councillor Macri, Councillor Stamos and Councillor Hesse absent. So, Catherine, if you could just read that out.
9 votes for and 2 against.
And 3 who are out
3 absent.
Yeah, thank you for that. So that is carried. Thanks, councillors. So councillors, it's now 9:29. I'm going to move a 6-minute recession until 9:35. So if we can return at 9:35, that's in 6 minutes. Thank you. Councillors, if you could return, it's now 9:35. Councillor, I will reconvene the meeting in about a minute. If you could return, please, to the meeting.
Yes.
Hi, Councillor Steer.
Hi, Mayor. Oh, here we are. Looks like everyone's here.
Yeah, I believe it's good to see some faces, to know that people are. I think Councillor Drury may not be here yet. Oh, Councillor Kett's here, good. Okay. I believe we've got a quorum. I believe we've got 9. Councillor Drury, are you there? Yeah, Councillor Drury's here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. I can see 9 councillors, with myself included, Councillor York, that's 10. Okay, great. So councillors, I think we'll reconvene the meeting. If you could note that, Catherine. So the next item that we're dealing with is what was item 13, which is Councillor McKenna's motion about flying the Italian flag on Festa of the Repubblica Day. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor McKenna?
Thank you very much. This motion has been reprinted so many times. It's been floating around since sometime sometime in July, I think. So I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It's appeared on so many agendas. It is just a very simple motion suggesting that we should fly the Italian flag on that one day a year, which is the 2nd of June, that the Italian flag be raised on the Leichhardt Town Hall. And this came about following the naming of that area as Little Italy back in on Friday, the 11th of June, when the ceremony was held at the Leichhardt Town Hall. So really, I don't need to say any more than that. Thank you.
Thanks for Councillor McKenna. I'm happy to second your motion.
Thank you.
I'll speak to it briefly, but is there any councillor that would like to speak to it? Okay,
Yes.
so I'll speak
Yes,
to it.
I would like to say a few words.
Okay, I'll add you to the speakers list then, Councillor Passes. Look, thanks, Councillor McKenna, for putting this up. I think it's a great idea to fly the Italian flag over Leichhardt Town Hall, and I hope that the staff will be able to organise that. I know it means a lot to the Italian community to see the Italian flag on Dawn of the Repubblica. The Italian community is very solid, very committed community, and while a lot of the Italians themselves may not still live in Leichhardt, they certainly come here and gather here for a lot of their celebrations. So I think it's fitting that we have that flying from the Leichhardt Town Hall. So thank you for bringing this motion forward. I've got Councillor Passes. Please go ahead, Councillor Passes.
Yes, I think this is a fitting recognition of the Italian community that moved into the area when it wasn't such a area to be proud of. And I can understand too what the Italian people went through. We just had a motion on vilification. The racism was rife, and my heart used to break for the people, how they used to be laughed at because they couldn't speak English. Yes, I think it's a very nice motion, but I question this motion from a former mayor that has been a few terms on council, why it was never raised before, but we are coming up to a council election.
Councillor Passes, stick to the subject, please.
I'm sticking to the subject. I question this motion coming up
Are you going to
because
say
we're
this
having
every
an
time?
election this
Are you
year.
going to say this every time?
Thanks,
Is that what
You
you're
thanks,
are
saying?
Councillor Drury.
interfering. You are interfering, and the mayor hasn't called you
Councillor
to
Passes,
order.
your speaking time is, you're speaking to the motion, yes?
Yes, I am. And you do not call other interjectors to order. So, Mayor, please be fair. You told me that the former mayor wasn't fair. And you're going along the same lines. Councillor Drury interjected and you did not call
Councillor
him.
Passes, if you go to speak, you need to speak to the motion.
Tell us
otherwise
more
you
about your
stop.
conversations, Councillor
Councillor
Passes.
Drury,
Tell us
please.
about your conversation with
Councillor
Councillor Portier.
Councillor Drury, please don't interrupt. Councillor
Yes,
Passes.
I see Councillor McKenna smiling because I've hit the nail on the head. All the time as mayor and councillor, never recognised and wanted the flag flowing.
Councillor Passes, not necessary, eh? Just not necessary.
A lot of things you say are not necessary either, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Passes. I'll certainly take that on board. Great recommend. Great to know what you think. Okay, we'll move on. Are there any other councillors that want to speak to this motion? Otherwise, I'll go to Councillor McKenna for a right of reply.
Yes, please, Chair.
Please go ahead.
Thanks very much. I can confirm Councillor McKenna was in attendance at the official renaming of Little Italy, and a number of the guests and speakers and representatives of various Italian community organisations raised in their comments what a nice gesture it would be for the council to fly the flag each year on the National Day, and Councillor McKenna took it on herself through her own volition to do so. It's as simple as that. And I'm not sure why there's any need for disparaging remarks in regards to something that is quite obviously a benevolent and benign act of recognition and respect. Thanks very much, Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Are there any other councillors who would like to speak on this motion? Otherwise, I'll go to Councillor McKenna for right of reply. I'll go to Councillor McKenna for right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to say, this actually, as Councillor Byrne has just said, this came about on the evening. Councillor De Cruz was present as well. I think there were a few people. It was a lovely function. A lot of people there, and the naming of the precinct as Little Italy raised this, and we didn't have a Little Italy precinct before, so we do now, and this is the outcome of that. So thank you for your support.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. I'll put the motion now. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And I believe that's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to the next item, which is the notice of motion from Councillor Kiat, Refugee Art Project. Councillor Kiat.
Thanks, Mayor. Now, this was a subject of, I think, 3 speakers last week, and I hope councillors can remember their really compelling contributions, which I think gave us a lot of information that I think most councillors wouldn't have known about what the Refugee Art Project is doing at Thirning Villa, and also situated it in the community that it sits and that it serves. It was fantastic to hear what great engagement they have with the community. It was also very useful to hear that the occupancy of the Refugee Art Project doesn't preclude the ongoing short-term artist in residence program. That's good news, because I know that councillors do want that to continue. Just about the Refugee Art Project, to refresh your memory, it's a not-for-profit community art organization. It's co-led by refugee artists, and the community most involved are Afghan refugees and refugee women who are held on Nauru. I think it's really important, following our resolution in support of Afghan refugees, that we recognize that we actually are already assisting Afghan refugees right here in Ashfield through the Refugee Art Project. That's something that we should be really, really proud of. And also, many in our community are vociferously opposed to offshore detention. So it's great to know that we're supporting women who suffered under the torturous conditions on Nauru. The organization has participated in the Biennale, in the Edge Inner West, Vivid, the Otherworld Zine Fair. It's worked with the Diversity Arts Australia to host an exhibition, I Am Not a Virus. And again, that it does relate directly to a resolution that Council passed in relation to vilification of Asian Australians in relation to the COVID-19 virus. I think it's really interesting that actually the work of the Refugee Art Project has so much overlap with the issues that Council cares about and that we've actually passed resolutions about, real priority areas for us in terms of our cultural and social impact, and that we weren't aware of it. So I think that points to the need for greater collaboration between our officers and Refugee Art Project and the community they serve in. I understand from speaking with some other councillors that's not unique to Thirning Villa as an artist in residency.
Councillor Cat, your time has expired. Did you need an extension of time?
I'll move.
Yeah,
move
sorry, if I
one.
could just have 1 minute. Sorry, I should
Okay,
get
Councillor
to the
Steers
point.
moving an extension of 1 minute.
Because
I'll second that. All
I
those
did
in
want to
favour,
move
please raise your hand.
an amendment. Oh, I think it's already on the screen. Thank
Okay.
you so much, Catherine.
That's
That
unanimous.
gets me to my second point, which is that it's not just the Refugee Art Project that is doing great work that we might not know about, and therefore not be promoting as much as we could, or collaborating with as well as we could. And I note that the Creative Inner West Cultural Strategy Action Plan is coming back from exhibition. That's great. And I've spoken with Catherine, the relevant director, Carolyn McLeod, the relevant director, about how we can, as part of the process of looking at the cultural strategy and action plan, how we can bring a focus to the artists in residency. Because I think that we all would want to know more about what they're doing and how the community and how council can benefit and how we can serve them to do their mission more effectively. So councillors, I'm happy to discuss further, but I hope that you can all support this really important project.
Mayor,
Councillor Keat.
I'll second Councillor Keat's motion.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Steer. I'll go to you, Councillor Steer, as a second of the motion, then I'll go to Councillor Drury and Councillor McKenna. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, this is an important motion for several reasons. Councillor Keat has explained the work of the Refugee Arts Project, and the speakers we had last week were very eloquent in their defence of the Refugee Arts Project. People need more than food and shelter to make their life meaningful, and that's what the arts are for. Arts make life better. You don't have to be the greatest artist in the world. You don't even have to make a living out of art. But the practice of arts is a way of expressing feelings, of communicating with other people, and using language and images in a way that they're not usually used to be more creative. And we admire the work of artists, but we don't really think what their needs are. And one of the main needs of artists is for accommodation, secure accommodation, so that they can keep on producing art. Yes, you can do it on your kitchen table, but refugees have insecure housing and insecure access to space and to work and to money. And so therefore it would be a really good idea if we could keep helping this project, which has already produced a lot of good work, doesn't impinge on anything else, and works very effectively in Thirning Villa, which is a place very well suited for artists in residence and has been for a very long time. Other uses have been suggested for Thirning Villa, but to my knowledge, there isn't anywhere else in Ashfield ward that is currently being used for artists in residence and our art projects, and therefore it would be a shame to move the artists to some other place that probably doesn't exist, and disperse them and their hard work and their collectiveness when they could be easily kept at Thirning Villa, which is a nice central location and has a traditional, at least in the last generation, use as an artist in residence. Let's support the arts and support refugees and vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Steer. So I've got Councillor Drury, then Councillor McKenna. Councillor Drury? No. Councillor McKenna?
Firstly, I've got a foreshadowed motion that I submitted to Catherine last week and again tonight. Could that come up on the screen, please? So, thank you. Look, there's no doubt that the refugee people are worthy, and I don't know them. I've never been to any of their, actually, I don't recall it that we've even been invited to go down there, but the reality is much greater than that. Thirning Villa is an iconic heritage building. It is one of the oldest buildings in Ashfield. It is the only one, the only iconic heritage building that is in the council's hands. It is not a meeting room. It's not just a place. It's a building that must be looked after and loved and maintained in its to maintain that heritage value. It should not be providing residency for any person or people, other than if there was an artist in residence that was from the regions or the interstate or overseas. Secondly, there was a well-established artist in residence program. The program was a decision of the former Ashfield Council. Unfortunately, it was abandoned, as was the Carnival of Cultures, the Food Festival, the Carols in the Park, and almost everything that the former Ashfield Council ever did was all abandoned. The third issue, that there is a process if we are going to, that needs to be followed before a lease of a council property is decided. A barrage of emails is not a process. Granting a lease for exclusive use, or as we've learned tonight as well, or when we got this report last week, there's also another group there called the New Moon Collective, who I have no idea who they are either. But granting a lease for the use of a significant building without a proper process should not be supported. Any lease should establish the activity at Thirning Villa. There's currently various activities that happen down there, including the sale of goods being undertaken in the pre-lockdown period. Now, the previous artist in residence program that Ashfield Council had, they were usually between 2 to 4 months, 4 months maximum residency. And these programs allowed for considerable flexibility of the use of Thirning Villa, and it could be used by council when the artists in residence weren't there. So I really think we need to take a step back and say think about all of the buildings that we've put to lease in recent times. This building is much more significant, and it is something that we should be being really careful about what we do with it. You might recall we had a briefing in May, and we were informed that they were going to be offered some rooms at Elkington Park, but I don't really know where the right place is, but we need to know how this is going to work. So I really implore councillors not to proceed with this today. It's not the right thing to do. We actually need to have a proper process, and we need to make sure that, and we need to review why the other program was ditched. What was the reason for that? Thank you.
May I speak?
Thanks, Councillor McKenna. So I've got Councillor Hesse and Councillor Passis.
Thanks, Councillor Porteous. Look, I very much listen to what Councillor McKenna says, and I respect Councillor McKenna's intentions. I think it's probably fair to say that over the last 4 years, the visual arts have not been, I think, addressed well by us as a body. I think there's been an emphasis on music, which I'm certainly a rather passionate supporter of. I'll admit that my expertise, in as much as it exists, is music, not in the visual arts. But I'm very conscious that it is indeed in the visual arts that we have, as well as music, that our creative community in the Inner West is very engaged in. And indeed that arguably is possibly as famous or even more famous than our music. And I think, you know, when I proposed a motion, was it two and a bit years ago, about considering Marrickville Town Hall as a place for the visual arts, not to the exclusion of the performing arts, I should say, that got fairly well poo-pooed. And I think in a way, and maybe, you know, I'll accept some blame if you like, perhaps it was a clumsy way of me approaching it, but I think that we have not taken that opportunity. It's not just the emails. I've taken the trouble to speak to some of the people involved with the Refugee Arts project, I should say. And what they've made very, very clear is that the setup they have at Thirning Villa now allows them to do stuff which is more than just what you might, well, I'll call, for the sake of it, an arts and craft program. And that is that it really genuinely engages people who've been through incredibly traumatic times, and regrettably, indeed, at our own government's behest, which is even worse. And it helps reintegrate people. Talking to the people I've talked to, it's very, very clear that it's been a very healing place. It's also been interesting, and I think we got a feeling for that last week, in that this is the program, the Refugee Arts Project, is recognised for its good work much more broadly than the Inner West. Now, the fact that we as councillors may not be terribly aware of that is possibly a problem, but it's no doubt an issue that we are probably not that well aware of. Many of the things that we might be aware of, but, you know, for a range of reasons we're not. No doubt the amalgamation has had some impact there. But nonetheless, I think to not support this project would be a fairly extraordinary thing. We have, in recent weeks, as I think others have noted already in this discussion, you know, expressed our support for the Afghan community and the terrible things they've gone through. This is a project.
Councillor Hesse, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
I'll wind it up. I think I'm not going to discount Councillor McKenna, but I do think Councillor Keat is on the right track, and we should probably think about a visual arts briefing at some stage. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hesse.
Look, Councillor Porteous, can I just ask a question? Because I'm hoping that we can sort of find some common ground here. Because I did.
Was I to speak?
Yes, Councillor Passis. I'll go to you after Councillor Keat asks his question.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Passis. I just wanted to ask in relation to the foreshadowed motion. Perhaps we can get advice from the officers. Is this in contradiction to the primary motion?
So, can I go to the governance specialist for that?
Sorry, not seeking advice from the governance. I'm seeking advice from what we used to call the Director of City Living. Now we call the Director of Community Services, I think.
Through the...
Okay. Please go ahead. Carolyn? We can't hear you. Carolyn, are you trying to speak? Could somebody check in, please? Oh, okay, go ahead.
Okay. So my understanding, firstly, I'll answer about the short-term residencies. To answer the question firstly about why that changed is, my understanding it was in response to a council resolution to increase the number of artist residency spaces within the LGA for inner west or Sydney-based artists, because potentially there was issues finding a number or enough suitable overseas or interstate artists that could stay for the duration of the time. And so then it was a trial, and they were putting in and trialing the New Moon Collective and the Refugee Art Project. And normally for all of the artist residency programs, we would have an EOI process, which is where people submit, and then they're, one of the questions they would be asked is, how will you engage with the community? And so because of the uncertainty of Thirning Villa, we have not been able to provide anyone with certainty around the use of the space, so that then the Refugee Arts projects have just been going on in a sort of month-to-month agreement, and the same with the New Moon Collective. So if there was a commitment from council to continue using the Thirning Villa as a cultural space or a creative space, probably what we would do is give the Refugee Arts project a lease or a license. I'd take advice from the Living Arts team on how long that would be for, and based on the council resolution. And then the other space, which is the New Moon Collective, we would use as a sort of more of a rotating space, and that would also change through with the artists and rotate. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, kind of. And maybe it's difficult to parse the written proposal from Councillor McKenna versus what was said, which, yeah, so I take that. But I guess, can I just clarify, you're saying that even if we, endorse the Refugee Art Project as a continuing tenant, that there would still be the opportunity to look at a short-term residency in the other space. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And in fact, one of the actions we do have in the draft cultural plan is to look at all of the artist residencies that we've got within the Inner West Council, and then sort of rotate a number of those artists. And we can definitely come back to council with another report about the artist residency program.
Okay. Well, yeah, on that basis, I don't think that, even though what Councillor McKenna is saying is against continuing the Refugee Art Project, I don't see that that's there in the foreshadowed motion. And on that basis, I'm not against incorporating it, because as I said, I do want to see all the really good things that they're doing celebrated, and in that sense, some form of rejuvenation of our focus on that project. And I've got no problem with us looking at the short-term residency, as Carolyn has just outlined. So,
point of order.
Yeah, if you're happy with that, Councillor McKenna, I'm happy to incorporate it, but I'm not going to abandon the commitment to the Refugee Art Project.
Okay, so sorry, Councillor Kidd, I've got a point of order from Councillor Passes. Councillor Passes, you had a point of order.
Point of order is, Mayor, Councillor Kiat has taken up the whole debate.
He's dealing with adding.
Whereas you usually do.
Thanks, Councillor Drury.
Yeah, taking my turn. Look, I
Okay.
just think that I was hoping that we could try and reach a quicker resolution of this. But so anyway, I'll leave you to think about that, Councillor McKenna. But I don't see that
Okay, so
without
Councillor
clarifying.
Cat, you'd be happy to add the foreshadowed motion, which is really more an amendment, really, to your.
Yeah, or even echoing
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So we'll move to. We've got Councillor Passis now.
Look, I have to agree with Councillor McKenna. Celebrations and what we used to put on in Ashfield completely disappeared with no explanation. At the end of the day, it's the councillors that make these decisions. We know what our residents want. We speak to our residents. I would love that this council had an abundance of buildings that we could give to everyone, but we must look after our own people first. Now, I spoke to a few people that amongst all the emails that were sent, and I learned quite a few things. They were based at Parramatta, and I believe it was the council, and they were told to leave. They couldn't tell me why. So it looks like they can set up home anywhere. We've brought up Callan Park on numerous occasions. I don't think a month goes by that I haven't had somebody contact me, a local people, our residents, looking for community space. And we haven't got it. I have said this before. I tried to have a youth centre down at Thirning Villa. For 2 years, I attempted to get premises for abused children. We couldn't do it. There are elderly people that wanted this boot scooping, dancing or practice or exercise. We had no premises for them. The Asian community, a large section of the Asian community have contacted me for choir, for singing. No, we cannot accommodate them. These are our locals. If you do not look after your own home first, you cannot help your neighbours. I have no problem if we had abundance of premises for these people to use it. That is a building down there that's in demographically, it's in a very good position for multiple uses that our residents would like. Callan Park has plenty of buildings. Has this group tried any other area? The refugees do not live here. It's also a premises that could house our homeless, the homeless from this area. So it would be lovely to be able to give this to every group that comes in. And somebody mentioned something at sale of goods. We don't know actually what this group are doing. All we hear is refugees and artists. We really do not know what's happening down there. Is it a commercial entity? Is there money made out of this? Is it not for profit? What is it?
Councillor Passis, I'll have to ask you to wrap up, I'm afraid.
I beg your pardon?
I'm afraid you've run out of time.
I'd like another minute, please.
Is there anybody who will move another
I'll
minute?
move that.
I'll move 2 minutes.
Okay, so we've moved. Sorry, who said they'll move it?
I'll move it. Councillor Hesse.
Councillor Hesse, and
1
that's
minute.
seconded by Councillor Drury.
Drury said 2 minutes.
Drury said 2 minutes. Yes,
All
let's go.
I'm
All those in favour,
saying,
please raise your hand. Okay, please go ahead, Councillor Passis.
all I'm saying is we do not know enough of what's going on. We can't just give away premises like this to certain groups without knowing actually what are they doing. Excuse me. How many people are attending? How popular is it? How many refugees are we getting to here and we're supporting? But I cannot vote for non-residents using our facilities when we have our residents, all different type of organisations and groups, screaming out for premises and give it to somebody else. I cannot do that. Callan Park, when I raised it with one of the people I spoke to on the phone, they said, oh, it doesn't have storage. As I said, maybe we'd be willing to help them with storage. But then again, Are they selling these things? Is there a commercial aspect to this? We do not know. And I'm afraid I am quite frustrated when staff are making decisions and we're not getting reports, we're not getting these things put to us. We do not know what's going on with our premises, with public buildings. We don't know. We're hardly told anything. And just last week, I told somebody, I think we've got on our website that we have community spaces. We don't know where they are. We must look after our own people first. We must look at the budget. Thirning Villa needs a lot of maintenance. It's a beautiful building.
Councillor Passis, I'd love to ask you to wind up, please. You've had 5 minutes now, Councillor.
I know. I will wind up, but I'm just about, Councillor Porteous.
I'm afraid you'll have to wind up now, Councillor Passis.
I'm just about, last week you cut me off when I still had time.
Councillor Passis, your time has expired.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
That's all right. Okay, councillors, is there any other councillor would you like to speak on this item? Otherwise, yes, I'll go to Councillor. Please go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, Chair. Sorry, just a couple of questions through the Chair. I'm a little bit confused, and I wonder if it might be helpful if we just got a brief verbal explanation about the nature of the tenancy. So, is it residential? Can I start with that question, or is it an artist in residence? What's the nature of the tenancy?
What are the other questions that you have, Councillor Byrne? Residential or artist in resident? Yeah, and what's your other question?
I'll start with that one.
Well, I'll ask you the other question as well.
I've got a couple, so
if you can give me the other questions as well, Councillor Byrne, please.
No, I'll just put that one, and I might have a further question.
Councillor Byrne, I'm chairing the meeting. Can you give me the other questions, please?
I'm well aware, having chaired many meetings in which you asked dozens of questions, Councillor.
Yep. So
I'll just put that one, and I may have a further one.
Can you give me the other questions, please, Councillor Byrne?
I don't know what they are until I hear the answer.
Okay, we'll put the first question from Councillor Byrne and then he'll think about the other questions.
Given you're the person who drafted the code of meeting practice to allow for unlimited questions, it's a bit hypocritical.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair. So Thirning Villa is a 2-storey heritage house located within Pratton Park. It is divided into a few sections. And on the ground floor is the home of the Ashfield District Heritage Society. When I say home, they're currently tenants there. And they have a space there where they store historical items, and it is open once a month to the public. There's also then a room that's basically a sort of flexible room that can be used for meetings or an exhibition, and I would say that it is about double the size of the meeting room where councillors have their pre-council dinner in Ashfield. Upstairs, it's then divided into the 2 areas where there's sort of like living quarters that have got, which we haven't been able to use for the last couple of years or year and a half because of COVID, but that has got a bedroom and someone uses that as a studio space. And then there's, say, 3 rooms and a kitchen area and a bathroom. There's also a courtyard. The way that it works out is that the 3 separate tenants all coexist together. And then if people need to go in and use that additional room that's the community space, they can. The rooms are just like how you might describe a largish inner west traditional sort of bedroom, in that it's got high ceilings and perhaps a fireplace in there. And then there's also a courtyard area that has a laundry.
In other words, it was a private home.
Sorry, Chair, can I get further clarification? Thank you very much for that explanation, but if I can just ask through the chair. So were the tenants residing there, actually sleeping there at night?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. On an artist residency program that the former Ashfield ran, and people from interstate or overseas would come and stay for 3 to 4 months at a time. And it could be one artist that would come and take over the whole rest of the space, apart from the area that the Ashfield District Heritage Society have. And I don't have the full details about the process where they changed over from the long-term residence to sort of artist in residence to having the Refugee Art Project or the New Moon Collective.
So just to clarify, Carolyn, those two projects are not residential.
That's correct. They're not residential.
Okay. Councillor Byrne, did you have any other questions you wanted to ask?
Yeah, just a couple. Thank you. I'm not meaning to be pedantic. They're not residential now. They've never been residential.
I think that was already answered, Councillor Byrne. They were residential previously when they came from overseas. They're not residential now. I asked that question.
And we also
okay,
gave
Councillor Byrne, is there another question you wanted to ask?
Well, I'd prefer if the officers could answer, because that's not what you've just described is not my understanding, and that's why I'm
it was just clarified it's not residential now, and it was explained by the officer that when they came from overseas it was residential.
Yes, but the Refugee Art Collective and the New Moon, the Refugee Art Project and the New Moon Collective, have they been living there at different stages?
Well, I think the councillor officer answered that.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm still not clear on that. I don't think I'm being unreasonable. Could I just ask if they could answer, please?
Okay, I'll go to the officer, please.
Through the chair, I do not believe that any of the artists from the Refugee Art Project or the New Moon Collective have slept or used Thirning Villa as a residence.
Thank you very much for that.
Okay, Councillor Byrne, are there any other questions? Let's please move on.
Yeah. So I understand the response about not. Is there any more information that could be provided about how this program morphed from one in which there was a 3 to 4 month residency into one in which there's just one or two?
That's already been answered. I'm sorry, but
point of order.
That's questions which have already been answered. I don't want to say it's intentionally wasting time, but it's getting a bit close to the bone. I'm going to move on.
Okay. Well, okay. I'll speak to the item then.
Okay, speak to the item.
I'm notwithstanding your assertions, Mayor, I'm not really clear in my mind as to what's occurred here. I know that the Refugee Art Project do excellent work.
We've had plenty of time to find it, But anyway, go ahead. No, don't worry.
Don't worry.
I know that the Refugee Art Project do excellent work, but I don't really understand how something that was a long-standing program in which multiple different artists were able to make use of it and make use of this beautiful heritage building turned into one in which there was 2 permanent tenants, notwithstanding the Ashfield Historical Society. And I agree with what's been said by other councillors about the fact that that's not really in keeping with our normal processes in terms of probity for an expression of interest process for a tenancy or a lease of a property. We have the Refugee Welcome Centre in Callum Park, which does very good and related work, and we have multiple other properties that we've nominated for use for artists in residency and arts programs, including, I might add, Marrickville Town Hall, which, notwithstanding what Councillor Hesse said, we have actually resolved to use for an arts program, despite the fact that was derailed a little bit the last time that it came to council. I would prefer to keep the Refugee Art Project where they are, no problem with them and the New Moon Collective staying there, but rather than making a decision now about just resolving that this will be a singular tenancy for those two enterprises, that we get a report on what's occurred. I don't think that that's been adequately explained. I don't say that in an accusatory way, but we have a responsibility as the board to understand what has happened, and that I think we do need to have an expression of interest process in which I'm absolutely certain that the Refugee Art Project and the New Moon Collective would put in an excellent submission, and I'd be very happy to see them continue there or at another council premises. But I think we've got to uphold proper process here by at least getting a report, understanding what's occurred, and ensuring that other arts enterprises and artists have an equal opportunity to be able to access our premises.
Thanks for that, Councillor Byrne. Is there any other councillor that wants to speak on this item? Councillor Drury, yeah, you haven't spoken.
Could I ask the General Manager whether he is certain whether the tennis club as tenants of that area or the Historical Society have current leases or licenses with the council?
I'll put that to the General Manager.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. It's my understanding, I don't believe so, but I need to take it on notice. I think if there are, they're on holdover provisions.
Okay, so that's taken on notice. Councillor Drury, did you want to speak to this item?
Yeah, look, I do want to speak to this item. Councillors will know that for some time I have been quite concerned about the backlog in terms of the leasing of council properties. These are properties owned by the people of the Inner West and managed by us. Some of them are earners, right? We rent them out to make money. Some of them we go through processes and we provide them for community benefit, and we discuss that, we agree on that, we sit down and we have a go. It concerns me that there are many groups in our community who are in council properties where they are not on current lease or license agreements. They're on handover or holdover, and they are in somewhat of a precarious situation. You would appreciate, and I think we had this discussion in relation to the golf club, is many organisations in terms of wanting to invest need some sense of tenure and some sense of certainty. And this is a very common problem. I've spoken to the General Manager about this and I've raised this many times. It is something that we need to get hold of. The Refugee Arts Project and the New Moon are not alone in not having certainty in relation to their tenure. I think the question of their tenure needs to be looked at in the context of actually sorting this whole business out. I would also welcome just having a look at the whole question and council, rather than council officers, making a decision about the Artist in Residence program in Thirning Villa. Because councillors have not made that decision. We have not made a decision about how Thirning Villa should be used. I understand that there's a resolution that has been used by the officers to morph into the current program, but that's not a very conscious or deliberate decision of council as to how we want that building
your
used.
time's expired. If you could wrap wind up, please.
May I have an extension, please?
Look, Councillor Drury, I won't be moving an extension because I think we do.
I
need to
move
get
that
to
the
agenda.
motion be put.
I move extension. I move an
Okay.
extension.
Oh
Councillor,
my goodness, the shoes on the other foot now, isn't it?
Councillors, I've got a motion that the motion be put. I need to deal with that motion first. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
Before you do that, Mayor, there is an issue. I'm not endorsing the Refugee Arts Project as a tenant in Thirning Villa, and my motion's been incorporated in. I didn't agree to that.
You can be incorporated whether you want it or not. You can. It doesn't mean your foreshadowed is.
So it means I
doesn't
have
still
to vote
stand.
against it
Well, yeah. I
because
guess if
I'm
you
not
don't-
prepared to endorse
Okay, well,
them as a
that'll be
tenant
your-
at this
that'll be
point
your
in time.
choice, Councillor
There's been
McKenna.
no process.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. I can understand that you don't like that it's been incorporated, but that's really not your choice. That can be incorporated if Councillor Cat chooses to do that. Councillors, the
Excuse
motion
me,
has been
Mayor.
put. Do I have a
Excuse me.
seconder for that,
Councillor
please?
McKenna can
Councillor
withdraw it.
Passos,
Point of order.
Passos,
Point of order. I have moved that the motion
yes,
be
I'm
put.
trying to find a seconder for your motion
Yeah.
that the motion be put. Do I have a seconder for the motion that the motion be
Councillor
put?
De
That's
Cruz.
second. You're seconding that, is that
Councillor
right,
De Cruz.
Councillor De Cruz? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Like
Councillor,
censorship.
I'll put that motion that the motion be
Mayor,
put.
Mayor,
All
may
those-
I
Councillor
make
Passos,
a
I need to
suggestion?
put that before we deal with any other business.
Do you want a
items.
rescission motion in a couple of weeks? Let's get
Councillor
this,
Councillor
let's
Point of
get
Passos,
this
order.
worked
Councillor
out.
Councillor
Creating an
Passos,
issue of disorder.
Councillor Passos, I'm going to give you a first warning that that sort of behaviour needs to stop. Okay, that is clearly disruptive. So please note, and I would like the minute taker to note that I have given Councillor Passos a first warning. Okay, we now have the motion that's been moved and seconded that the motion be put. I'll now put that. All those in favour, please raise your hand. So we have Steer, McKin, the Cruz. I think we only have Steer and the Cruz and Get. Okay, and all those against, please raise your hand. That's Hesse, Drury, McKenna. Councillor Macri, are you there? Against, yep. So that is lost. You've got that 3 and 11. Thank you, Catherine. So is there any other Councillor Drury had his remarks?
I'm seeking an extension of
Okay.
time to
I'm moving
complete my
extension time
remarks.
of 2 minutes for Councillor Drury.
Not Councillor, no, that's ridiculous. Councillor Drury, do you want an extension of time of 1 minute? I'll move that way. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Yeah, okay, that's seconded by Councillor McKenna. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Okay, Councillor Drury.
I think what is important is that we make very deliberate decisions about what we want our council buildings to be used for. I think once we do that, we need proper processes like expressions of interest or tenders to call for all those who should wish to use these buildings to put up their hands. And then I think what we need to do is actually have current leases or agreements with those organisations. I think that's the proper process. I think that's how we should be doing things. I think that really, if we're not doing it that way, then we stand open to the accusation that we may be showing some favoritism towards some group for one reason or another, because we don't have a robust public process. We don't have proper consideration by council of what we want a building used for. And then we don't have an open and public process where people can say, yes, I could meet that need. I'd want to do that there. And then we let the staff determine which of those organisations might best meet the need of what we've said we want the building used for.
Sorry, Councillor Drury.
And then we need to get in and get organisations. There are too many organisations who don't
Councillor
have
Drury, if you could wind up,
current
please.
leases or agreements.
Thanks, Councillor Drury.
I think rushing in to do this, to give this organisation a lease and agreement without
Thank you, Councillor Drury, if you could wind
puts
up,
us at a
please.
laughing stock.
Thank you, Councillor Drury. Okay, councillors, I'll just say a few words and then I'm going to go to Councillor Kiat for a right of reply. Look, I think we have an imperfect situation here, but I think the needs are very clear. We have some very good organisations that are working out of Thirning Villa. We have the Refugee Arts Project, which is clearly doing a really good job and clearly has the support of a large number of people in the community. And
Madam Mayor, point of order.
What's your point of order, Councillor Passes?
Can you tell us what the good job it is they're doing? Because only you know.
Councillor
We
Passes,
do not know.
Councillor Passes, that's not a point of order. Thank you very much.
We do not
Councillor
know.
Passes,
Yes.
I'd remind you that you've got a first warning and you're about to get a second.
The new era of calm
Thank
is
you,
not
Councillor
that far.
Byrne. Councillor Byrne.
It's not that fast either.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Okay, councillors. The Refugee Arts Project is clearly doing a very good job from the many, many reports from people that are supporting the organisation. I think we've got an organisation here who's seeking some indication from council that they have some security of tenure at the site. And I think we should give it to them. I agree with everything that's been said, that the system is currently is not perfect at all. There are some serious issues that we need to address. I'm really pleased to see that Councillor Kiat has incorporated all of those issues into his motion so that they do get addressed. I'm also really pleased to see that Councillor Kiat has acknowledged the fact that while we're endorsing the Refugee Arts Project as a tenant, we're also noting that it's not at the exclusion of other artists and art collectives. There's no indication there of the term of that tenancy, and it's clearly seeking that report come back which will address all of the concerns that we have about the current process and how it's operating. So I think that this is a very good motion that deserves the support of council. It's a good way forward. It's acknowledging the fact that we are not really happy with the current situation as it is, and we want to see improvements, while also acknowledging that we have a group of refugees who are doing a lot of great work with their arts project, who deserve and should have our support, and rightly so want to know that there's some security of tenure for the period that they are currently going to be able to stay in Thirning Village. And don't forget the councillor briefing that we've had and what was on the table in terms of other proposals for the villa. I think you are well aware of the plans for a tenant that would be paying a commercial rent to go into the villa. And I don't think that's what any of the councillors want. I would hope that's not what any of the councillors want, but I would, question what is it exactly that councillors do want. If it's not that they want to give security to a group that well deserves it and acknowledge the great work that they're doing by doing so, while also getting a better process in place, then I don't know. So I hope that councillors will be supporting this motion. Thank you. Councillors, I'm now going to go to Councillor Kiat for a right of reply. Councillor Kiat.
Thanks, Councillor Porteous. Look, it's been made out that the history and the process here is really obscure or even improper, whereas the council officer has elucidated exactly what has occurred. There was a previous system which was not working because they weren't getting in the artists. There was a resolution of council to introduce more local artists, which led to a license being granted to the Refugee Art Project.
A license.
That was all done properly. I don't know why it would be asserted that that was improper. It was done in accordance with the resolution of council by one of council's officers. That's how we do business. Now, the uncertainty was introduced when a councillor briefing was given, as Councillor Porteous has just referred to, where it was suggested that we could make more money by kicking them out. Now, I didn't think that was an appropriate way to go, and that's why I put this motion forward, to endorse the status quo, because I think that it's working well, and I don't think we need to make more money from Thirning Villa. Now, I don't see why that's so controversial. I haven't drafted up a lease, and I'm not asking anyone to sign it. I'm asking us to say what the cultural team has done is excellent. We're very lucky to have the Refugee Art Project, and it would be a shame to kick them out. So I don't see why that's controversial. And Councillor Drew talked about bias. Well, you know, let's think about what kind of unconscious bias could be going on here. Would we be having this conversation if this was a bunch of white local artists who were there and it had been suggested that they'd be kicked out?
Point of order.
Point of order. Point of order.
I've got a point of order from Councillor Passes. Councillor Drury, desist, please. I've got a point of order from Councillor Passes, then I'll go to you. Councillor Passes.
Do not try to turn this into
what is your point of order?
My point of order is,
what is your point of order?
Councillor Kiat should withdraw what he just said.
I won't.
Well, I don't have an issue with what Councillor Kiat said.
I asked a question.
Sorry, what's your point of order, Councillor? Is it a point of order, Councillor Drury?
Yes, it is a point of order.
What's your point of order?
My point of order is that the councillor is imputing improper motives of those that are, to those that oppose what he is saying. He is suggesting that unconscious bias on behalf of those that oppose what he is saying.
I'm sure that's not what he's saying, but I'll just get a clarification.
That is an improper motive.
I'm sure that
I believe he should withdraw that. Councillor Passes on this occasion is entirely correct.
Thank you, Councillor Drury.
Brought up the colour of people's skin.
Councillor Passes, thank you. Councillor Kiat, could you just clarify what you were saying and clarify that that was not your intention?
I'm not accusing anyone of racism.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for councillors to know that unconscious bias is real and we should ask the question. Now, we've got a bunch of refugees who are using Thirning Villa. It was suggested to us that we could make more money by kicking them out. I'm saying that we shouldn't do that. I don't think there's anything improper there. And for all of the good points that have been made by Councillor McKenna and Councillor Drury about how we could improve both the program at Thirning Villa and across the Inner West, that's fine. Why does that have to be at the expense of a successful project?
Yeah.
I don't understand that. And I'm not suggesting that they should be there for 100 years. But I'm just saying, like, let's not kick them out. Let's endorse them as a continuing tenant, and we'll see more information come forward about this project and many others across the Inner West. Why should we single them out? So look, I mean, I'm very surprised at the heat that this has caused. I mean, I'm very surprised because really, I mean, I think they're a fantastic project. I think we should be grateful that we have Afghan refugees, we have refugees from Nauru.
Point of order.
I'll have to ask you to wind up, Councillor Kiat.
Point of order.
I'll deal with your point in order just a moment, Councillor Passes.
So I think councillors should vote for this. And
I have a point of order.
This project and others.
Thank you, Councillor Kiat. Yes, Councillor Passes, what was your point of order?
Could Councillor Kiat withdraw? We want to kick them out.
I don't believe he said.
I don't think one councillor said tonight, we want to kick them out. Why do we want to kick them out?
Could you just clarify your comment so that it wasn't?
I'm not even sure what's being asked of me.
I believe that Councillor Passes is concerned that you said that the other councillors, some of the councillors wanted to kick out the refugees.
No.
You didn't say that.
I said that was proposed to council, and I'm proposing that we don't do that.
Okay.
It's been recorded. It's been recorded.
Okay. Thanks for that, Councillor Passes. Okay, councillors, we've now got the motion before us. We've had the right of reply. I'm now going to split the.
Oh, right.
Just to clarify, Chair, the foreshadowed motion still stands, notwithstanding the amendment to the primary motion.
Yes, there's still a foreshadowed motion, yeah.
Is there a seconder for it?
Well, we deal with that if the primary motion fails.
Happy to second it.
Councillor Byrne, much as I appreciate all your help, I don't need it. Okay, councillors, we've got the primary motion here, which is the Keir motion. I'll now put that. All those in favour, please raise your hand. So that is Councillor Hesse, Councillor Cruz, Councillor Kiat, Councillor Steer, Councillor Stamoulis, Councillor Lockie. Councillor Macri, are you supporting the primary motion? No? No, okay. Okay, so that's Hesse, De Cruz, Porteous, Lockie, Stamoulis, Kiat. And against, we've got Councillor Byrne, Drury, McKenna, Rossetti. Councillor Macri, are you against? Yes, against. And we have Councillor York against as well. And I assume Councillor passes, yeah. So Catherine, that vote is?
That is 7-all.
7-all. So that's 7-all. And so I will use my casting vote to vote in favour of the motion. So the motion is carried. Thanks.
And I give notice of rescission.
Well, you'll have to do that with you'll have to do that with the general manager, and you'll need another 2 councillors to support it. Councillor,
I'm afraid you're wrong there.
Councillor passes. Councillor passes. Item 15 is Councillor Macri's motion, fee waiver for sporting fields on hire, which I believe has been answered by the officer's comments, but I'll go to Councillor Macri. Councillor Macri.
Yeah, I don't think it fully addresses the issue, but what I'm seeking is a report. Canterbury Council and now Canada Bay Council has now just followed suit in actually refunding, well, not so much refunding, but crediting the whole season for the next season because of the disruptions. And I just want to get a report back to see how, if we can actually emulate that.
I second the motion.
If we can follow suit and do the same thing.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Macri. Councillor Passis, you seconded the motion. Did you want to speak to it? If you could be brief, that would be wonderful.
Mayor, I don't really appreciate you giving orders when I speak. You
I'm not
don't
giving
say
orders.
that to
I'm
other
just
councillors.
making a suggestion.
No, you don't make that suggestion to other councillors.
Well,
And I do
Councillor
not
Passis,
appreciate
I mean, with great respect, I think you've spoken to every motion this evening. So
I have every right to.
you certainly do have every right to. But I think Councillor Macri,
please do not tell
Councillor
me.
Macri rightly spoke very briefly to this item.
Excuse me, you do not adjudicate who's speaking rightly or wrongly.
Councillor Passis, you are using up your speaking time, so I'd suggest that you speak to the
Come
item.
on, we want to get to the submarines.
Councillor Passis, please go ahead.
We could do nothing else than waive the fees.
Thanks, Councillor Passis.
So, gee, Mayor, you're different on the phone to me to how you're acting in the meetings. Very different.
Tell us more, Councillor Passis.
Okay, Councillor Passis, did you want to speak any further on this item? No, okay. Is there any other councillor that wants to address this item? Otherwise, I'll go to Councillor Macri for a right of reply.
It's fairly
Macri? Oh, Councillor Byrne, okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine, Chair. I'm in support.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Macri, I'll go to you for a right of reply.
Yes, Chair. It's to get a report on what the other councils have done. It's fairly self-explanatory. Yeah. I just think we need to look at that possibility to refund those clubs, not to refund them, but to credit them for next season because of the lack of ability to play in this season. If we have the capacity to do that, that's what it's about.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Macri. Councillors, I'll now put this motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And I believe that's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Councillor Steer's motion to keep the Inner West government nuclear free. Councillor Steer, to you.
Yes, thank you. I've been contacted by some people who live in Balmain that we shouldn't vote for this motion, and it surprises me that they feel this. This motion is relevant to Inner West Council because our LGA is on Sydney Harbour, and that includes the suburbs of Balmain, Birchgrove and White Bay, where the passenger terminal is. So I don't really understand why some residents oppose this. Perhaps they don't understand why I'm putting this motion. And the reason is because nuclear submarines are a danger to public health and safety, to plants, animals, humans, and the environment. We heard last week from Jem Rummold, who is the CEO of ICANN, the only Australian organisation to win the Nobel Peace Prize for its work in support of the UN Treaty against proliferation of nuclear weapons, which this council has twice voted to support, and which is now official national local government policy through the Australian Local Government Association. So what I'm proposing here is not radical. It's something that council has done, has done many times, and has a long history of, which I have set out in the background. But why do we support? It should be known that nuclear submarines are a pollutant. In the Arctic Sea, there are several. There are 18,000 separate radioactive objects on the bottom of the sea, and 1,000 of them are giving off levels of dangerous radiation. So much so, it includes 19 vessels and 14 reactors. 1,000 of them are still giving off gamma radiation. This affects the entire ecosystem, the plants, the animals, and ultimately the people that eat the seafood. 90% of those things are in 6 submarines that was sunk by the Russians, and that the Russians are now going to retrieve over the next few years. And the reason for that, as said by the head of Russia's nuclear organisation, was that it poses an unacceptable risk for the ecosystems of the Arctic. And while you think the Arctic might be very far away from us, can I move that I have more time, by the way?
I'll move an extension of 1 minute.
1 minute, thank
3
you.
minutes. Give us
Seconded
3.
by Councillor De Cruz. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's carried.
Yes, and while we might think the Arctic is very far away, there are also nuclear submarines that have sunk in the Atlantic and are polluting the Atlantic. We don't want them polluting the Pacific. Our entire LGA is built on water. The Cooks River empties into Botany Bay, which is a commercial port. White Bay is a commercial port. There is a very, very real risk that nuclear submarines will enter our harbour, and if they sink, or if there's an explosion or an attack, we will be in danger. And if you don't think it's important, the wife of the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia bothered to write an entire article in the Daily Telegraph about this very motion. So the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia thinks that this is an important motion, and so do I, and I hope that you will vote for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Steer. Do we have a seconder for Councillor
I think we should also move to extend the time of the meeting by 15 minutes. It's 10 to 11. We have to do it before 11 o'clock.
I'm happy to second the motion by Councillor Steer.
This is the Councillor Steer's motion on the books. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Yes, and I've also just moved to extend the time of the meeting from 11 o'clock by 15 minutes so that we can.
11 o'clock. Do I have a seconder for that? I'm happy to second that.
Thank you.
So that's seconded by Councillor De Cruz. Look, I'll put that. All those in favour, please raise your hand. So we've got Hesse, Blocky, De Cruz, passes Byrne, McKenna. Councillor York, you in favour? Yes. And those against, please. Councillor Stamlis, are you for or against the motion to extend until 11:15? Sorry, I can't hear you, Councillor Stamlis. Are you for or against? I can see the hand. You're against, are you? Okay. And Councillor Macri, are you against as well?
I'm for that, Madam Mayor. For.
Are you for? Okay, Councillor Stamlis is
Sorry.
for. Councillor Macri, you are for as well, are you? Okay. Okay, so Catherine, have you managed to capture that? So that's 14 for and no against. That's unanimous then. Thanks, councillors.
No,
Okay,
Mayor, I was against the extension.
Oh, okay. Sorry, we didn't capture you, Councillor Drury. So that's 13 for and Councillor Drury against. Thank you. Okay, so councillors, we've got Councillor Steers moving this, and it was seconded by Councillor
Hesse.
And I'll move to Councillor Hesse. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Hesse?
I will, Councillor Porteous. Thank you very much. As I begin my contribution, I'd like to acknowledge that this matter has not yet been discussed in the Australian Parliament. And I note my disappointment that Australia is a strange country sometimes. We have just made, our federal government has made a decision which has not yet been put to the People's House or the Senate, a decision which could actually drag us into a war with China, our major trading partner, a decision which could put nuclear-powered submarines in Sydney Harbour, which would make Sydney Harbour a target for the weapons of those who might oppose Australia. I do find that an extraordinary situation. I'll quote now from a letter that the People for Nuclear to Some, a long-term anti-nuclear organisation, have written to the Australian government, the opposition leader, and indeed the French, British and American governments. Among the many things noted in their letter is that the decision to equip Australia with nuclear submarines fueled with highly enriched uranium is both destabilising and proliferative, even if technically within the letters of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. I think that's important because this council, as noted by others, saw a motion not that many months ago, moved by Councillor Byrne, and I thank him for that, where we supported, I think, look, I don't want to claim unanimously, but overwhelmingly, the Australia-wide campaign for our government to join with nations around the world against nuclear proliferation. This campaign is something that's been supported by the people of the Inner West over generations now. Certainly, I know Labor Against Uranium, which came out of the late 70s, was a very important movement, particularly based in the former local government area of Leichhardt. And certainly Leichhardt and Marrickville councils passed motions to be part of the nuclear free zone campaign, and perhaps Ashfield did as well. I apologise if I've missed that, if I don't understand Ashfield's history there. So I'd say the people of the Inner West are very concerned. Of course, we are all very concerned about the various goings on militarily, and I wouldn't pretend to be an expert. I wonder, though, how many of our parliamentarians are any more expert than any of us. They too rely on media reports and reports that are available to us, and the support for this decision by the Australian government is less than overwhelming. And while I often do not agree with our former Prime Minister Paul Keating, in this matter I suggest that former Prime Minister Keating is absolutely on the money. He's been very, very critical of this decision by our federal government, and I think he's highlighted the things that that are very dear to my heart, and they are the importance of good relations with our neighbours, something that local government has done for many decades through the Sister Cities program. And it's a pity Councillor Iskander isn't here tonight, because I know how much he cares about that program as well, where we develop good relations with people around the world. and particularly in our region. I think that's what Mr. Keating has talked about. I think too, the importance of no surprises to our neighbours, and this process has been not just a surprise to the Australian people, but to our neighbours as well. It's not good neighbourly. I think this motion supports the idea of saying to our federal government, a government, as I say, that has not yet discussed this on the floor of Parliament, that we in the Inner West are concerned. And
Councillor Byrne, I'm afraid your time is up. Did you need an extension?
I'm not Councillor Byrne.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Hesse.
Move the Councillor Hesse has 1 minute.
Look,
2 minutes. We need 2 minutes.
I will not abuse. I
the
will not abuse the meeting, and I will end there and just say, please vote for peace and please vote
May I
for
speak
motion.
next,
Thank you,
please?
Councillor Hesse.
May I speak next?
Yes, I don't have anybody else on the speaking list, so go ahead, Councillor Bassett.
First of all, this motion should not be on the agenda, and I cannot understand Admiral Steer or Councillor Steer's concern about the submarines being in the harbour. Given the cost of them, I would hope they're further out protecting us, not sitting in the harbour going for coffee. Councillor Hesse just stated that probably the ministers, the members of Parliament, are just as in the dark as we are. Well, I don't think so. I think they're briefed by experts on this type of thing. And I really want to say, does this council really believe discussing these issues is what they were elected for? Their parties, if they're opposed to it, they can fight this on their party level, not at the ratepayers' expense. And we also had the former speaker say that he wants good relationships. Is that the good relationships that the Greens have with Israel? They've done nothing but attack the Israelis. They're very selective in their speeches. This motion has nothing to do with our role. I think all councillors are aware of people living next to vermin and a fire hazard. And they've seen the photos, and our council has done nothing about it to date. We have so many issues that are pressing, that are urgent. Last week, we were read in the press that we couldn't even build a toilet block. And we've got experts on this council now talking about submarines and the state of the world and what we're doing with different countries. I honestly, do you councillors listen to what people are saying? Not just the press, not just the right-wing press, even the left-wing press. We have become a joke, an absolute joke.
Thanks, Councillor Passis. Is there any other councillor who would like to speak on this item?
Yes,
Councillor
Chair.
Macri, please go ahead.
Chair, I'd just like to speak to the substantive part. And, you know, I don't want to go into a situation of green bashing or political bashing, but realistically, what's required for the basis of any good decision is information. And to think that we have that information at our disposal about why these decisions are made, it brings the council into disrepute, because people look at this and they go, what are they talking about? They don't know what they're talking about. Councillor Steer said about the nuclear proliferation policy we have here. We're against nuclear weapons. That's right. But these are nuclear-powered submarines. They're not they don't carry nuclear weapons. This is what it really has to be about. It's getting all the right information. And we really need to know, you know, how we are actually looking after our local issues, as opposed to trying to delve into these issues where we have no control over. And it's farcical to think in a half-hour or 15-minute debate you're going to really get around this issue, because it's not. It's really belittling the issue and making us look like we don't know what we're talking about. It's Facebook stuff. It really is. You can't get your information on this stuff on Facebook. There's more serious information where this stuff has to be made. And we don't even know if the submarines are going to be stationed here. Oh, from my understanding, they're going to be in Fremantle and North Queensland. So I don't even know if they're even going to be in Sydney. As far as the nuclear free zone in the inner west, I get that. Yeah, we put the signs up, but it's not really real. We have nuclear medicine going on at RPA. How do you think the radioactive isotopes for the treatment of cancer get there? They drive through our streets. That's how they get there. They don't come in by helicopter. So I think we've got to be a little bit realistic. Having this motion here, it's as strange as actually asking ScoMo to come pick up the garbage. He wouldn't know where to start because he is not briefed and trained on how to do it. We have to be on our game and looking after our local issues and moving forward with those. And, there are a lot of challenges here. You've seen tonight, we're struggling to get through an agenda. And, look, the Greens have got a policy, and Councillor Passos is right. You've got your policy, you've got a party. You need to actually take your policy with your party and go with your party and go to the government and put the stuff in. I think it'll be more reputable because what it does, we haven't gone to the community and asked them what their position is. We haven't engaged the community. We haven't had a mandate to make this statement. That's where the problem is because we're getting hijacked into political agendas where we don't know what the community really wants. I think that's the real difficult thing here.
Councillor Macri, I'm afraid you'll have to wind up. Your time's expired.
Yeah. I move an extension if he wants it.
I'll just wind up with just saying, I just really think one of the issues about this is really disappointing is the attack that the Inner West comes under. We get called woke. We are not woke. We are not woke. I detest that. We're not woke. And it overshadows all the incredible things that this council does. That's what it does. It belittles us. And everything good that we do just gets squashed down. Our creatives, the issues we have with energy and everything gets done. And it all gets washed down.
Councillor Macri.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Macri. All right, Councillor, is there any other councillor who would like to speak on this item?
Yes, Chair.
Is that Councillor Byrne?
Yes, it is.
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I don't think that this motion reflects the priorities of the community at this time. This is not a normal time. This is, in fact, right smack bang in the middle of the biggest crisis that we have faced as a local community in living memory. We're at the end of, I think, 15 weeks of lockdown, hopefully about to end that. But the extraordinary economic, mental health and broader societal impact on our community from that period, but none of us would underestimate that. There's an expectation in the community that I concur with that we should be focused really sharply on addressing that, boosting vaccination rates, assisting people to come out of lockdown, helping local businesses to recover, bringing the community back together again. And I don't think that the tabling of this motion at this time is in keeping with those priorities. I don't say that the council should never pass motions about state or federal or international issues. I note the motions in support of ICANN and the international treaties on nuclear weapons that have been passed previously, but that was a very sophisticated campaign. It was global in reach. It was a resolution passed by multiple councils across Sydney, New South Wales and Australia. This is something this motion, by contrast, is something that's been cooked up singularly by some councillors on the Inner West Council and then tabled here without consultation. I also agree with some of the comments that have been made about the reputational damage that's incurred. I remember very well how much of a laughingstock Marrickville Council became after the Israel boycott. That was very unfortunate. I don't doubt that the councillors who concocted that campaign and were prosecuting the idea that the Marrickville Council should be heavily involved in boycotting Israel, believed in what they were doing, but they did a lot of damage to the reputation of the council by prosecuting it. The overwhelming majority of people in the Inner West, even those who would agree with Paul Keating's depiction of the policy, don't believe that the Inner West Council should be taking up time and energy by resolving this way. The thrust of the motion itself is, with respect, pretty lightweight, citing the fact that we have street signs in the Inner West as justification for the policy is not real. I'll leave it there.
Councillor Byrne, yeah, thank you.
Madam
Is there another
Mayor?
councillor that wants to speak on this item?
Madam
Councillor
Mayor?
Stamalos, please go ahead.
While I won't be supporting this motion tonight, I do think it is relevant to public debate that exists right at this moment, and that's why the motion was obviously put forward, because it is relevant, and council does take up these issues on a very frequent basis. The reason I can't support it is because I don't think the motion is framed well enough for the current circumstances. It would be good for council to refine its position. I'd be concerned that taking anything to the local government NSW conference at this point in time was extremely Sydney specific. And of course, we do have a lot of communities around Sydney Harbour that would have concerns or otherwise, that we do have, but then there's other communities around New South Wales and even Australia that might be impacted by nuclear submarines. So the framing of the motion, I think, is probably a little bit narrow just yet, and it's very Sydney-centric, whereas, as I say, it could affect other communities. But other than that, I don't have any particular issue with this being raised at a pertinent time in the debate, being raised now. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Stamalos. Are there any other councillors want to speak on this issue? Look, I'll just say a few words briefly. I'd like to thank Councillor Steer for bringing forward this motion. I think it's an important motion. I think it's important that we state very clearly that we are an anti-nuclear council, and this is what this motion is doing. I think there's a strong expectation from the majority of people in our community that we do exactly that. It's a progressive community, and it really should be a no-brainer, I'd say, for all of the councillors that consider themselves progressive in their politics. I mean, I don't have a problem with not debating it tonight. Councillor Steer could have put this motion up and we could have voted on it straight away if you didn't want to spend time debating it. But all the councillors who lamented that we're going to be wasting time on it, wasting inverted commas because I disagree with it, they also spent their time, their speaking time, saying how terrible it was to put a motion up like this. Well, that's really useful, isn't it? How about we actually
yes, it is, because
debate?
you're making our council a
Councillor
laughing
Passes,
stock.
I'd ask you to desist, please.
You are making
Councillor
our
Passes,
council a laughing
Councillor
stock.
Passes, thank you. Councillor Passes, if you do that again, I will issue a second warning. Okay. This is a very good quality motion, and it should be debated. If we want to debate it, it should be debated. If we don't want to spend time on it, then we vote on it. But don't dismiss it, because it's important that we actually make a stand on these issues. I'm really proud of the fact that Leichhardt Council has been a non-nuclear council for so many years. I think it's important to make stands like that, and I want this council to do that as well. So I thank Councillor Steer for bringing it forward, and I hope we have councillors who support it. If it's not supported, then I think that's really a slap in the face for our community for not supporting this. If there's no other councillors like to speak on this item, I'll go to Councillor Steer for a right of reply. Councillor Steer.
Sorry, Chair, can I just briefly put a question?
Councillor Byrne, you want to ask a question? Ask a question, go ahead.
Just to Councillor Steer or to the council officers if they have any expertise. Is Councillor Steer aware of whether nuclear submarines have been in Sydney Harbour previously?
It is quite possible, because people against nuclear disarmament have protested against nuclear ships. So we know that nuclear ships that contain nuclear reactors to power them have in fact entered Sydney Harbour.
Thank you, Councillor Steer. I'll now go to Councillor Steer for a right of reply.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to address every point that has been raised. I've already pointed to the history of this council and the 3 former councils in opposing nuclear weapons and uranium mining, and that is wonderful. The point, nuclear submarines are a new issue, and we are indeed the first council where this has been raised, and I'm very proud of that, because I think that shows that we continue to be on the cutting edge and we continue to be informed. I would like to point out that the motion that I would like to take to local government New South Wales refers to New South Wales waters, while in particular Sydney Harbour, and that is because that is relevant to Inner West Council. But in point 4B, I refer specifically to New South Wales waters, because we don't know where these submarines will go. Even if they're berthed in Perth, it is naive to assume that they will not travel around and that they will not have to dock. And one of the main, and as Sydney is the major port in Australia, it is quite likely that they would dock here. So this motion, if you like, is a preemptive strike. Before the submarines exist, before they're made, and before they come to our part of the harbour, we want to send a clear message to the government that this is not acceptable. If there is a nuclear accident or explosion or attack, the water of our LGA will be dangerous to human, plant and animal life. People love fishing and swimming. We've just spent $8 million on Dawn Fraser Pool. None of that will be relevant if there is a nuclear attack. The submarines cost $90 billion. Think how many roads, pavements, and other parks could be provided for all 500 councils in the whole of Australia for that money. There are so many better uses for that money than by making Australia a nuclear attack. People have said that this makes our council a laughingstock. Well, if the right-wing media and the Deputy Prime Minister think that we're woke and think that that's a joke, that's because they're afraid. They're afraid that we might start a movement, just as we did with supporting the UN Treaty Against Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, just as we have done with so many other things. They're afraid that we will start a national movement, as we have done before, and they are afraid of opposition. And what is wrong with that? There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. This is consistent with all the previous motions that have been passed historically, which I've set out for.
Councillor Steer, I'm going to have to ask you to wind up, please.
Yes, thank you. And I hope that all of you send a clear message to the federal government and to councils around Australia that nuclear submarines are unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steer. I'm now going to put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. We've got Councillor Hesse, Councillor Steer, Councillor Porteous, Councillor De Cruz, Councillor Lockie, Councillor Kiet is yes. All those against, please raise your hand. We've got Councillor Passis, Councillor Jury, Councillor Byrne, Councillor McKenna, Councillor Stamoulis, Councillor Macri, Councillor Rossetti, and Councillor York. So I think that's lost. That is 4 is 6 and against is 8. So that motion is lost. Thanks, Councillor.
May I move that the remainder of the agenda be deferred to the next ordinary meeting of council?
Exactly what I was going to do, Councillor Jury. Thank you very much. And on that basis, we'll now conclude the meeting. Thanks, councillors. We'll see you on the 12th. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.